I was talking to a friend the other day, a lovely woman, about your age, sharp as a tack. And she was telling me about her week. Monday, she drove her grandson to soccer practice because her daughter was working late. Tuesday, she spent the entire afternoon at her son's house, waiting for the plumber so he didn't have to take time off work. Wednesday, she was balancing her son's checkbook. Thursday was grocery shopping for both her own home and her daughter's. And by Friday? Well, Friday she was just plain exhausted. She looked at me and she said, "I love my family more than anything, but I feel like I've run a marathon I never signed up for. I thought this was supposed to be my time." And when she said that, a little bell went off in my head. How many of us are feeling that way? How many of us, after a lifetime of hard work and raising our own families, find that our golden years are being spent running a never-ending support service for our grown children? We love them, of course we do. It's the very depth of that love that makes it so hard to say, "You know what, I can't today." If any of that sounds familiar, if you've ever hung up the phone after talking to your children and felt more like an employee than a parent, then you're in the right place. Today, we're going to have a gentle, honest conversation about the subtle signs that you might have become a slave to your children after 70, and more importantly, how you can begin to reclaim your precious independence. This isn't about blaming anyone, least of all yourself. It's about recognizing a pattern so we can change it, together. Let's start by looking at the first sign, because it's one so many of us can relate to. It's when your own schedule is no longer your own. Think about your calendar, whether it's the one on the fridge or the one in your mind. How many of the appointments and tasks written there are for you? Your doctor's visit, your bridge game, your quiet time to read a book. And how many are for other people? Picking up the kids, pet sitting, house sitting, being the on-call handyman or babysitter. There's a big difference between happily helping out now and then and having your weeks planned around the needs of your adult children. It's that feeling of waiting for the phone to ring, knowing it will likely be a request that will wipe out your plans for the day. Your time becomes something you loan out, rather than something you own. And time, my friends, is the most valuable currency we have at this stage of life. We've earned the right to spend it on ourselves, on our own passions and peace. When you find yourself constantly clearing your calendar for others, it's a quiet signal that your independence is slipping away. Now, this leads us directly into the second sign, which is a little tougher to talk about, but it's so important. It's the feeling that you can't say no without a tidal wave of guilt. You felt it, haven't you? That knot in your stomach when they ask for one more thing, and you know you're just too tired, or you had your heart set on something else. But then the thoughts start creeping in. If I don't do it, who will? They're so busy, they need me. I'd be a bad grandparent if I said no. Or even, what if they get angry with me? What if they don't call as often? That guilt is a powerful chain. It makes us believe that love is synonymous with self-sacrifice, that being a good parent means always being available, no matter the cost to our own well-being. But let me ask you this, did you raise your children to be helpless? Of course not. You raised capable, intelligent adults. And sometimes, our inability to say no doesn't help them, it keeps them from standing on their own 2 feet. It also drains us, leaving us feeling used and resentful, even if we're afraid to admit it. Saying no isn't a rejection of your family, it's an affirmation of your own needs and your own life. And that brings us to the third sign, which often follows right on the heels of the first two. It's when you notice your own hobbies, your own social life, and your own personal dreams have started to fade into the background. Remember that pottery class you always wanted to take? The weekly coffee with friends you used to never miss? The simple joy of sitting in the garden with a book for an entire afternoon? When your time and energy are constantly being diverted to your children's lives, your own life necessarily gets smaller. You start canceling on your friends because a family emergency, which often isn't a real emergency, pops up. You're too tired from babysitting to go to your club meeting. That trip to see the fall colors you planned gets postponed, year after year, because you're always needed for something. Your world, which should be expanding with new experiences and friendships in retirement, instead begins to shrink, revolving entirely around the needs of your family. Your identity, which is so rich with experience and wisdom, slowly gets buried under the label of mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, not in a loving way, but in a way that erases you as an individual. Now, we've covered 3 important signs today: when your schedule isn't your own, when guilt dictates your choices, and when your own interests begin to disappear. These aren't small things. They are the quiet, gradual ways we give away our freedom. But recognizing them is the first and most powerful step toward change. In our next conversation, we'll gently explore the final 2 signs, which often touch on the practical aspects of our lives, like our finances and our own sense of purpose. But for now, I want you to just sit with what we've talked about. Think about your own week. Be gentle with yourself. This isn't about finding fault, it's about finding your way back to you. It's interesting, isn't it, how these patterns can sneak up on us. One day you're happily retired, planning your days around what brings you joy, and the next, you find your life has been quietly, lovingly, taken over. You were thinking about what we discussed last time, weren't you? Maybe you caught yourself looking at your calendar with a new perspective, or you noticed that familiar pang of guilt when a request came in and you hesitated. That awareness, that little flicker of recognition, is everything. It's the seed from which your independence can grow again. Now, let's continue our conversation. We've talked about time, guilt, and the fading of our own interests. These are often the first signs we feel in our hearts and our daily routines. But there are 2 more signs that go a little deeper, touching on the very practical foundations of our lives later on. They're a bit more sensitive to talk about, but so important if we want to reclaim our footing. The 4th sign is a subtle but powerful shift in your family dynamics. It's when you start to feel more like an employee than a parent or grandparent. Think about the nature of your interactions with your grown children. Are they primarily based on shared stories, mutual advice, and genuine connection? Or have they become mostly transactional? A list of tasks to be completed, problems for you to solve, errands for you to run. When you're together, does the conversation quickly turn to their needs and their schedules, leaving little room for your own thoughts, your own stories, your own life? You might find that your opinions are no longer sought on matters of the heart or philosophy, but only on practical things like, what temperature should I set the water heater to? Or, can you remember the name of that pediatrician you took me to? Your value, in their eyes, can slowly become reduced to what you can do for them, rather than who you are to them. This is often when resentment, that quiet, slow-burning emotion, begins to build. It's not that you don't love helping. It's that you start to miss the relationship. You miss being seen as a confidant, a wise elder, a source of laughter and comfort, not just a source of free labor. It's the difference between feeling cherished and feeling used. And you know in your heart when that line has been crossed. It's a hollow feeling, and it can make the love you feel so deeply become tangled up with a sense of obligation and weariness. This leads us directly to the 5th and final sign, which is perhaps the most financially and emotionally significant. It's when your own financial security or the comfort of your own home starts to feel compromised for the sake of your adult children. Now, this can take many forms. Perhaps you're regularly dipping into your savings to help with their bills, their vacations, or even their down payments, while you quietly worry about your own long-term care. Maybe you've even taken on debt to help them out. Or it could be a physical space issue. Have you found that your quiet, peaceful home has become a free bed and breakfast, a laundromat, or a storage unit? Maybe the grandchildren have a dedicated room at your house, which sounds lovely, but it also means you've lost your guest room or your craft room, a space that was meant for you. Or perhaps an adult child has even moved back in, with the understanding it would be temporary, but temporary has a way of stretching into years. Your sanctuary, the place you worked so hard to create for your retirement, no longer feels entirely like your own. This sign is so tricky because it's rooted in the most profound love and desire to help. The instinct to provide for our children is primal. But when it comes at the cost of our own financial stability or our peace of mind in our own home, we've crossed a dangerous line. We are essentially sacrificing our own well-being and our hard-earned security. It sends a message, perhaps unintentionally, that their comfort is more important than our own. And my dear friend, that is simply not true. Your security, your peace, your comfortable home, you earn these things. They are the foundation of your independence, and they are not something to be given away lightly. So, there we have them. The 5 signs, a schedule that's not your own, the chains of guilt, the fading of your own life, the shift to a transactional relationship, and the compromising of your financial or home security. Seeing them all laid out like that might feel a little overwhelming, and if it does, please, take a deep breath. This is not a condemnation. It is a diagnosis. And you can't fix a problem until you know what it is. Now that we understand what we're dealing with, the most important question becomes, what do we do about it? How do we untangle this web of love and obligation and rediscover the vibrant, independent life that is waiting for you? That is exactly what we are going to explore when we continue. It's not about having a big, dramatic confrontation. It's about gentle, firm, and loving steps to redraw the lines, to reclaim your time, your energy, your home, and most importantly, your role as the beloved matriarch or patriarch of your family, not its chief employee. You know, it's one thing to recognize the signs, to nod along and say, yes, that's me. It's quite another to feel, deep in your bones, that change is not only possible, but that you deserve it. If you're feeling a little daunted, that's perfectly normal. After a lifetime of putting others first, the idea of shifting that focus can feel strange, even a little selfish. But I want you to reframe that thought with me right now. This isn't about being selfish. This is about stewardship, about becoming a good caretaker of this one precious life you have left. It's about honoring the person you are, not just the role you play. So, let's talk about how we reclaim that beautiful independence. This isn't about issuing ultimatums or creating family drama. It's about a series of gentle, firm, and consistent choices that, over time, will rebuild the boundaries that have slowly faded away. It all begins with a conversation. But not the kind you might be dreading. This isn't a grand proclamation or a list of complaints. It starts with a quiet, honest chat with yourself. Find a peaceful moment, maybe with a cup of tea in your favorite chair, and ask yourself, what do I want my days to look like? What hobbies have I let slide? Which friendships have I neglected? What does a truly fulfilling week feel like for me? Get reacquainted with your own desires. You can't ask for what you want if you don't remember what it is. Once you have a clearer picture in your own mind, the next step is to start changing the pattern of communication with your family. This begins with one of the most powerful, and for many of us, one of the most difficult words in the English language, no. But no doesn't have to be harsh or final. It can be gentle and loving. It's about offering an alternative, not just a rejection. For instance, instead of a weary, resigned yes when asked to babysit on a day you're exhausted, you could try something like, I'd love to see the children, but I'm just not up for a full day of babysitting this Thursday. How about I take them for a couple of hours on Saturday morning instead? That would work much better for me. Do you see the difference? You've affirmed your love, you've protected your energy, and you've offered a solution that respects your own limits. You are not a 24/7 service, you are a person with varying energy levels and your own life. It's okay to act like it. This leads beautifully into the next step, which is to proactively fill your own calendar with the things that light you up. Don't leave your schedule as a blank slate waiting for their requests to be written on it. This week, go ahead and write in that coffee date with your old friend from the garden club. Block out time for your weekly walk in the park. Sign up for that lecture at the community center. When a request from your children comes in, you can then honestly say, I'm so sorry, I have a prior commitment that day. And that commitment is to yourself and your own well-being. It's a truthful and unassailable reason. This shifts the dynamic from you always being available to you having a full, rich life of your own, which is exactly what we're aiming for. Now, let's talk about the financial and home boundaries, because these can feel particularly tricky, tangled up as they are with our deepest instincts to provide. The key here is to learn to separate emotional support from financial rescue. Your love is unconditional. Your bank account does not have to be. If you find yourself constantly bailing out your adult children, it's time to have a loving but firm conversation about your own financial reality. You can say something like, "I love you so much, and I want to help, but my retirement income is fixed, and I need to be mindful of my own long-term security." This isn't about being stingy, it's about being responsible. You worked hard for your financial peace of mind. Protecting it is an act of self-respect and, ultimately, it prevents you from becoming a financial burden on them later in life. And if your home has become a hub for everyone else's clutter or lives, it's time to gently reclaim that space. Your home is your sanctuary. It should be a place of peace for you. You could start by saying, "I'm doing a bit of a clear out to make the house more manageable for myself, so I'll need you to come by and pick up the things you're storing in the spare room by the end of the month." Or, if an adult child is living with you, a conversation about a timeline for their next steps is not only appropriate, it's essential for both of your independences. Remember, this is a journey, not a single event. There will be stumbles, and that old guilt will try to creep back in. But with each small no, with each activity you do just for you, with every boundary you gently reinforce, you are rebuilding the vibrant, independent, and joyful life you have earned. You have spent decades being the rock for everyone else. Now, it's your time. It's your time to rediscover old passions and find new ones. It's your time to deepen friendships and enjoy the quiet moments in a home that is truly your own. It's your time to transition from being the family's go-to problem solver to being its cherished, respected, and wonderfully independent elder. You have so much to offer, not just through what you do, but through who you are. So go on, take that first small step today. Call a friend for a chat. Pull out that old hobby. Say no to one small request without apology. You've got this. I'd love to hear how you're doing on this journey. Share your thoughts, or even a small victory, in the comments below. Let's support each other. If this conversation resonated with you, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more chats like this. Here's to you, and to living your most independent, joyful, and fulfilling life. You truly deserve it.